we go. There's no way out of here. When you come in, you're in for good. There was no promise made. The part you played, the chance you took. There are no boundaries set. The timing yet. You wasted still. That's David Gilmour, 1978 from his solo album. Keep those lyrics in mind. They may become important later. Wait for it. Angel's Envy, Finished Rye. So I watched this movie the other night when I was supposed to be getting to bed early, as we discussed before. The Menu is the movie with Ralph Fiennes. The day before, we went downtown to a community-style dinner, and the chef was out front for the diners to see and converse with. It was a lot of fun, great food. And we were talking about Chef's Table on Netflix and the episodes they liked, and he recommended seeing the movie The Menu. He described it as cooking with suspense and horror. Of course, as soon as I heard horror, he got my attention. Not horror with mutilations and blood everywhere. Well, maybe a little. Anyways, greetings from the music room, the den of iniquity, the sub-basement. Today's episode 3 is going to be a movie review. Have you ever served humanity? Or has your whole life been about humanity serving you? Are you more of a giver or a taker? If there was one way for me to sum up this movie, it would have to be the ending of the movie The Silence of the Lambs. Hello, Clarice. I'm having an old friend for dinner. I'm not sure what that accent was, but it's all I've got. Anyways, also, you may never think of Taco Tuesday again. It's a satire, a comedy with a little horror mixed in. It's absurd and suspenseful. And watch out, because spoilers follow. So, it's about giving and taking. The service industry jobs. Have you ever heard of the waiter rule? It's a rule that suggests that how we treat waiters and waitresses can reveal a lot about our personality. Some employers actually use it as part of a job interview. It's about recognizing and accepting that every person has a story. It's about being empathetic. It's the opposite of narcissistic. Understanding that the waiter or waitress might be a person, a sole breadwinner. Perhaps they're working 2 jobs. Maybe they're paying for their way through school. Whatever the situation, it doesn't have to be waiter or waitress. It's about being aware that humans have an expectation to be treated equally. And that's the bottom line. Understanding the worth and value of each person. And just because one may have more money or more knowledge we use to put others down, it feels to me that this movie is what every chef or server or customer service worker behind the desk would like to do at one time or another on one of those bad days. That is, give a big middle finger to every person and every customer that's ever given them a hard time. You know that guy or gal, you know them. When all the tables are full, they walk in without a reservation for a party of 6 half hour before closing and demand to be seated vocally and right away. And when they're not, they ask, do you know who I am? Or the person who walks into the post office the week before Christmas and there's a line going out to the parking lot, sees the sign that says passports only by appointment, and then starts complaining that it's the only day they can do a passport and they need to do it right now. And they start screaming and yelling at the overworked, understaffed employee. You know these people. This movie has archetypes of all the different customers one may encounter, and one may have in any walk of life. There's Ralph Fiennes, there's Anna Taylor-Joy, who I first saw as the eldest daughter in the movie The Witch. She's the outlier in this movie. It kind of reminds me of White Lotus with the staff of the resort pitted against the guests. Another example is I couldn't help thinking about when I used to work at McDonald's. Boy, no job prepared me more for dealing with humanity than that job. We have a close family friend who's a personal chef. He says, I really love cooking when people love to eat what I've cooked. But what I can't stand is people who fill their plates with food, but take a few bites and then throw it away. Ralph Fiennes plays Chef Julian, one of the most famous chefs in all the world, who has his restaurant on a private island you have to take a boat to. Each plate is $1,250. This means only a select group of people get to go. And what a group it is. The tension begins to build when you realize that they weren't just invited there to have dinner. It kind of reminds me of the first time I read the book from Agatha Christie, And Then There Were None. A group of guests is invited by an unknown guest whose name happens to be UN Owens. Unknown? They gather at a castle in the Swiss Alps, accessible only by a cable car. And guests are killed one by one until they realize the killer is actually one of them, but they have no idea why they're being killed. There's themes of guilt and justice play out as guests begin to realize they were invited as retribution for their lives. And what's really going on, realizing they were invited and that they have to atone for their actions. Another guest is you have the food critic. She's taken all the joy out of eating and cooking by describing and focusing on the one bubble as a flaw in an otherwise perfectly presented dish. There's an actor whose career is winding down. There's the wealthy couple that's dined 11 other times at this restaurant, but when asked, they can't remember a single dish that they ate. And of course, there's the foodie, that guy who's become an intolerable bore and believes he knows everything there is to know about cooking because he read the article or memorized every episode of Chef's Table. There's the table of the young, rich, techie entrepreneurs who ask, don't you know who I am? It's a room full of covert and overt narcissists, a room full of takers and not many givers. There's a photograph in the chef's office that captures the image of a younger Ralph Fiennes. The only time you see him smiling in the movie is in that photo, when he was serving humanity, delicious, simple food, cooking for people as a line chef, people who weren't afraid to ask for a doggy bag afterwards. A photograph from long ago when he was working as a fry cook, doing that SpongeBob thing with the golden spatula, flipping burgers, making the best cheeseburgers in the world with crinkle-cut French fries. He served it to people who loved his food, paid him for it in cash, and took leftovers in a brown bag, not too proud to ask for it. Now jump forward decades later, and he's one of the greatest chefs in the world and has lost his joy for everything, really, especially wanting to cook, having people enjoy and appreciate his food. The second time we see him smile is when the only other person in that room, Anna Taylor-Joy, who has been a service industry worker of another type, let's just say the oldest type, asks for a burger and fries as her way out and to have it to go. It's a moment in cinema that I think has influenced a record number of cheeseburger orders being made recently in restaurants around the world. When I was watching the movie, I knew it was going to happen. I just knew it was going to happen, but I can't tell you. Well, I should tell you. But I knew it was going to tell you. Oh my God. A fire pit scene with s'mores. Anyways, you'll see. The very next day, my wife asked, hey, could you make me a cheeseburger, put it on a toasted pretzel bun, put some fried onions on it with a little American cheese just like they did in the movie? I believe one of the defining periods in my life was working in the service industry, where I was behind the counter at a store in the mall when people used to go to the mall, when I was 16. And then for 2 years during college, I worked at McDonald's for an overwhelmingly impressive $2 an hour. I was so happy I got a raise to $2.10 an hour. Yes! And I mean back in the day. That was where they said, hey, I heard we're going to get a drive-through soon. And I was like, A what? What's that? Is it like a tube, like the tube thing at the bank? The food's going to come through the tube and into your car? They said, no, people are actually going to drive up to a window. And I couldn't picture it working. How's that supposed to work? When I worked at McDonald's, there were a lot of retirees that showed up as soon as that restaurant opened looking for breakfast and coffee. And those were the days that we actually cooked breakfast. I don't know how they do it now. But I used to, when no one was looking, throw in some extra eggs, make the pancakes a little fluffier, put in extra sausage for my retirees who sat out in the lobby. And I'd walk out with a coffee and refill their cups for them. I mean, we used to do that back in the day. The manager used to get mad at me for giving them extra scrambled eggs. When I met my wife for the first time, we bonded over our mutual experiences working at McDonald's. When my children were of working age, we felt it was very important for them to be in some type of a service job where they got to interact with the public, whether that was as a receptionist at an office, hostess in a restaurant, cook at a fast food place. The movie explores all these themes, situational and dramatic irony, and that the dramatic irony occurs when we, the viewers, are aware of a particular event or instance that's happening right in front of us, but the characters are not aware. They're oblivious to it, and then we get to watch them start to realize what's happening. As each course is served and the motivation behind that course, it becomes disturbingly clear. We begin to realize, there's another reason why these guests have been invited. Each course isn't necessarily saying there isn't an art to the cooking, but it is saying that many people can get so carried away with assigning meaning to every minute detail of a dish that they lose the ability to empathize with how much time it actually took for gathering, shopping, preparing, tasting, serving. Yes, the guests have been invited to do penance for what has become joyless, greedy, decadent lives that have one way or another irritated the chef. Sometimes they get invited for retribution just because they made a bad movie. He had worked himself to the point of exhaustion at his restaurant and finally had a day off. And he rented a streaming movie and thought it was so bad that he wanted to get back at the actor played by John Leguizamo, and that's why he invited him. In this case, he invited him for a dish which was best served warm, or actually with chocolate drizzled over it, over an open fire. That may become important later on. Anyways, before you get excited about the thought of Taco Tuesday coming up, or you can't wait to have summer come around in the cold climates so you can make some s'mores around the fire pit, better see this movie first. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Thanks for listening. If you like it, like it. If you want to comment, please do. If you want to subscribe, even better. Otherwise, that's all there is. There isn't any more.